Looks like it's 5:30 now. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Community Development, Economic Development, Park and Recreation Committee meeting. Stacy, will you do the roll call?
Mrs. DiGiacomo?
Here.
Mrs. Mills?
Here.
Ms. Holman?
Present.
Mr. Roskovics?
Here.
Mr. Timonier?
Here.
And we would like to welcome our guest, Catherine Colgren. We appreciate a lot. I kind of changed the order today, so we're going to start off with the city manager report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a quick update, especially on the downtown grant that we've been working on from the Appalachian Commission. We did receive our bids back for the sidewalks. We had 2 bidders on that. We're still going through those. They did come in a lot higher than we had expected, but we are working with Eastgate and with our local folks here to see if there's a way that we can make up the gap with some extra funding so that we can get the sidewalks rolling. We've asked for an extension from the bidder, the low bidder, so that we can have a little bit more time to evaluate this and work with Eastgate on the funding aspect of it. Today we did receive some back and forth from Eastgate again on the facade program for all of the businesses. Yes, this is still happening. As most of you know, we've been working with LDA to do all of the material bid specs for the buildings for the individual owners and working through all of the agreements. And as I mentioned last night at council, we hope to have the subrecipient grant agreement resolution for council at the next meeting so we can get that signed and start moving on all of those. Other than that, as we reported from Public Works, as far as Park and Recs go, starting to wind down in the parks, especially now that the kids are back in school, certainly seeing a lot less utilization down at Walnut Beach. The lifeguards' last day to guard the beach was on Monday for Labor Day, so we'll be starting to put some of that equipment away for the winter. We know there's still good weather, so we'll keep an eye on things and still be updating the parks as we go along. That's really all we have right now.
Did our lifesaver rings last through the season?
Not really. We've found a few of them thrown up on top of the playground set, the ship playground set that the guys had to go and recover. I think 1 set was stolen, so we might have 2 left down there.
And what did we start with?
4.
Not perfect, but not as bad as I was fearing.
Well, that's the second set of 4. The first set was all stolen. Yeah.
So worse than I was fearing.
Yes.
All right.
Can we ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Okay. So, Mr. Timonier, is no surprise to you. There are naysayers out there to say that this project isn't going to happen. So,
The downtown one?
yeah.
Mhm.
So what is it that we can offer? I don't know if it's a timeline, something to ensure that this is real and it will happen.
Yeah, this has been my concern ever since the state decided to distribute the funding as they did. If you recall, I wanted to go at this alone. I thought all of our cities should have been able to apply ourselves for these grants so that we could administer them. You know, the problem is it's the state giving the money to Eastgate, then giving the money to us, then us giving the money to the individuals. So that's been the holdup. I guess the only other thing I can tell you to do is, you know, Geneva is in the same boat as us. We are probably neck and neck as far as where we are moving towards completion. You know, they haven't been able to start their streetscape work nor facade work at this point either. We're in the same kind of boat with Eastgate as far as getting subrecipient grant agreements together and then the agreements that are going to go out to the building owners. So I think our building owners themselves are a little bit ahead of the game because they have already garnered a lot of the bids that they needed. So once we're able to get the finalized agreements from Eastgate that the money is coming, we should be able to push this out pretty quickly.
And are they providing any sort of timeline? Like, will they even get started this year, given it's?
I think once the agreements are signed that they can go, as long as their contractors are able to, they should be able to start at any time. My hope was to have the sidewalks done by winter. I'm still hopeful of that because they think it's about a month project. But it's going to all depend on whether we can find the extra funds to do it.
How much are those extra funds?
It was significant. I want to say the bids came in at about 1.3, 1.4, and if you remember, we had about 900,000 towards the project. But we did end up putting lighting into it, so that included over 20 new street light poles on the street. And they would be the decorative ones, and of course, by putting in the conduit in the sidewalk, and then of course running the power lines, that was a significant expense to it. What we don't want to do is pull things out of this bid to cheapen the project if we're able to get those items included in it. So that's the stage we're at right now.
Mr. Manager, isn't there a timeline so that they would have to send that match or whatever when they're doing this facade program? I mean,
Everything has to be completed in 2026, and I
Okay.
think it's by the end of October of 2026.
Okay,
Yeah,
so at least that is something that's
yes.
a final date or whatever. And then will they, when everything is situated, will they have something so that people know who's doing what? Maybe this one's getting a new roof, or this one's doing doors, or?
That's how all of those projects are going to be bid individually by the owners right now is the plan. So yeah, they'll be in charge of their own individual projects. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have any questions? No. All right, Parks and Recreation, I believe they submitted a master plan to you?
I have not received it,
Okay.
unless it was in the minutes, which I don't believe. I don't believe I've seen that.
I might be
A
ahead of
master plan
myself.
or an annual report?
It was a master plan, but maybe it wasn't submitted yet.
I know they had been talking about and working on a few things for each individual park, but I don't think that's been completed yet.
So I think the biggest news to come out of the Parks Board is that we recognize that we need to program our parks more. And our first event is going to be May 25th, Memorial Day Parade, which will include Veterans Park, and I think it's going to be great. We've got a great committee, and we have quite a bit of time to work on it, and we have had some city employees volunteer as well, so I'm excited about that. So May 25th, it's going to be at noon, and it's going to be wonderful. So in new business, what kind of sparked my desire to have this meeting? Everybody is aware that I've been looking for solutions to the homeless problem, and I thought, let's start at the spigot. Where are homeless people coming from? Earlier today, though, I met with someone that works at one of the centers, and what I was 100% certain of, I'm not 100% certain of now, but I still want to have this discussion because I think collecting data is really, really important. This is what we do know about homelessness. This is what I've learned anyhow, is you can't help someone who doesn't want help. We must enforce our laws. No one is above them. Too many groups are working in silos. We need coordination. Addiction and mental illness are a big part of the crisis. And yes, people are being brought to Ashtabula for treatment, then discharged into our street. And outside agencies are also placing people here without any housing in place. So just from that point of view, what I think is the first step is gathering real data from our rehab centers and agencies. And I talked to square one, and they seem to be very open. Because I would like to know, how many people are they serving? How many are from out of town? What support is offered when they leave? And I think that if we keep pushing for partnerships, that it then isn't a blame game, it's about accountability and solutions. So I don't know if you have any comments?
I certainly think it continues to be an issue, and as we all are getting some complaints about it.
I get
And I
weekly
think, I'm not
complaints.
sure that your position is, as opposed to doing nothing, that there's something that we can do. And I agree that there's something we can do if we're willing to have honest conversations with each other about what's possible, and then move forward with an action plan to at least address the issue, as opposed to pretending it's going to go away, because it isn't.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
So I think in gathering that information, I think you also need to be aware, because it's never asked or the data is never requested, of all that we do when it comes to those that are homeless and or on the verge of becoming homeless. I think you would be extremely surprised how many people, and you spoke about this yet last night at the council meeting, that our staff work intimately to make sure that they're housed. The shelter right now, did anybody know what their capacity is or what they've been at? They're full, and they're full with families right now, which is this is a little bit different trend than what we've traditionally seen. There are several families that our staff works with in order to keep them in the places they're at. Today we just had a call of a person that died at home over the weekend. The bank is looking to repossess the house, and the bank is not going to give them any more time to do their thing, even though this person that's a responsible party to it, like literally just passed away this weekend. Those are the types of things that our staff intervene in. Let's get down to the real reason that this is so prevalent. It's what you said earlier. It's the people that don't want the help.
Right.
And it's the people that are on the street. And as you also saw from a situation that I kept you informed on, we took that person and arrested a person several times during a week, only to have them back out within an hour or so, or not being treated in a facility that would then pink slip them, because, I mean,
Right.
that is in my opinion, from what we see and what we hear from everyone, mental health is probably 99.9% of the reason we're seeing what we're seeing when it comes to drugs and what we're seeing when it comes to homelessness. The lack of ability, and it's a legal thing, the lack of ability to, and there's not a better word for it, pink slip someone, is the problem. We are bringing, our police department is bringing people to agencies that are in serious mental distress, and in my opinion, they're not being treated and kept in a facility where they can be treated, to either get them medicated, figure out what's going on, or whatever the case may be, and they're being let go. And there's this constant battle of they're only acting like this because they're on something right now, and then they're brought for detox, and the detox is saying, no, they're acting like this because they're going through a mental health crisis right now, and we can't treat them until the mental health crisis is treated. And so it's this constant battle, and then they just end up where everybody can see them, and then this creates the there's homeless everywhere issue. Those that want to be helped are getting help.
Correct.
Those that do not are what we have to turn to law enforcement and turn to the institutions to help solve. And until something changes, as I've been preaching for a long time, when it comes to how we are able to pink slip someone or mandate that they get help or whatever that case may be, in my opinion, that's the missing piece.
So,
So, but
Go
just
on.
so I go on a little bit more, I do agree that a lot of the agencies are working kind of in their own silos, but this is where we have been meeting together to discuss. I know everybody's tired of hearing it, and I'm tired of saying it. I really want to get this day center off the ground, because that's where all of these facilities can come together to provide those assistance, again, to those that want to be helped. And it provides a place to go, it provides a place for those services, getting out of the weather, whatever the case may be. But we just had a meeting today with a gentleman who volunteers at the Lighthouse Baptist food distribution on Lake Avenue. They're doing 250 or so meals a day out of there. So, I mean, the need is...
Is that just homeless, or is it beyond?
No, that can be anybody in need, you know. So that's anyone in need. And those places are important because some people that are on the verge of homelessness may need those couple meals a week, you know, to sustain their families or to keep them out of that situation. So there is a lot that we don't see or don't acknowledge that's going on to keep people housed. And then as we're talking about this, the other challenge that we're trying to tackle when we do this zoning and we do the master planning and with the land bank on board as well, affordable housing is a problem right now. Not a problem in that it's bad for our community, it is non-existent right now. So even when we have situations where we can place people, it's extremely limited. And those that are on the verge of becoming homeless and maybe have to move out of their current situation, they're facing rents of $900 to $1,200 a month for really bad living conditions, in our opinion.
Right.
So all of those things combined kind of, you know, brings us to what we are today. But the issues that everybody sees and the problems that are created are those that unfortunately don't want to get help, that are homeless. And for whatever reasons those are, and that's where we have to have law enforcement and the courts doing their thing. But, you know, here again, what's the solution?
The broken system.
And again, I truly believe it's on the mental health side is where it's broken.
So let me ask you this. I would really like to know how many, this is something that I hear, I can't prove it, but I hear this all the time, that people are just, our police said it, that people are just dropped off in Ashtabula. A lady that I spoke with today said people are bussed in and dropped off.
The busing thing, I mean, that's nice for Facebook comments and different things like that, but I don't think our police department has ever seen a bus, nor anybody has ever seen a bus come here. I know there was one time, you know, there's buses on Route 90, they're heading towards Ashtabula. Well, it was because the school district bought all new vans but they were, you know, full of homeless people coming here. So, you know, it's sensationalism in some aspects. But as I've mentioned several times, 90% of AMHA's housing is in the city of Ashtabula. When you also look at the social services that are available in the county, they're all located in the city of Ashtabula. And of those, look at the huge percentage of that's located in downtown Ashtabula. So when people are seeking assistance in Ashtabula County, the city, who does nothing, has all of these social services for people to help them get out of their situations. So does it make sense that people are flocking towards the city for that? Yes. And it's also why I've said, which you all know numerous times, the people and the organizations that are here, we're happy to help, we're happy to support, but we don't want any more. It's a big county. There's other places that new places can locate. And we've made that very, very clear.
So that brings me what also was a motivation for this, because we were not successful in making a moratorium on rehab centers. So I just have to think to myself, all right, it seems like you've established relationships with our current rehab centers where they are trying to work.
And just so you know, those are working. We just had a situation over the week, I can't remember if it was over the weekend or late last week, where someone that our police department encountered said they were from one of our local organizations. and they wanted to return, and we got a hold of them, and they helped us return the person. So those things are happening. Glen Bay is another example of that. There was a person that was encountered down in the Gulf, said they came here through Glen Bay. They were immediately on the spot with their resource team that came in and assisted the person in getting back to where they wanted to go.
So do you think, go ahead.
Just a couple of questions, based upon some of the things that I heard from Mr. Timonier. You mentioned that some folks don't want the help. Are we maximizing the services for the folks who do? And I don't know that you can answer that question, but the organizations who are servicing.
Yeah, and I mean, from my interactions with all those organizations, I do believe they are. What is, as I mentioned, what's getting harder now is placement, because the availability of housing is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and more expensive by the minute.
Okay, so.
Now, I'm sorry to cut you off now. I can also say that we know of situations where some of the individuals that don't want help are receiving quite a bit of assistance. There's one person that I'm sure we are all aware of that is labeled as homeless, however, has a house that's paid for, has a lot of income that comes in to her, whatever account is set up for this individual, but chooses, because of mental health issues, to not return to that house, even when we sometimes bring her to the house, or take advantage of the funding that's there. So at what point does those funding agencies step in and say, wait a minute, why are we keep doing this when the person's not taking advantage of them? So there are people that you see that actually have housing but are labeled homeless because we always see them roaming around.
And in my mind, that lumps back into mental health issues.
100%. Well, I can tell you the reason that this person doesn't return home is because there's people on the walls telling her she can't live there. Now, how that person can't be admitted somewhere boggles my mind.
Okay, and I certainly don't have an answer to that either. But to go back to a couple of the things that you mentioned, we do have some, I don't know if you want to call them laws or legislation or just something on the books for how do we deal with folks who are out on the streets. To what extent are we holding folks accountable to whatever the legislation or the laws is?
Well, and as I mentioned, we have been arresting, we have been ticketing. I'm sure the solicitor's office can chime in on the different activities that we encounter people with and cite them with. But it does happen, and here again, it goes back to, I'm sure if you ask the courts, it goes into the jail space, it goes into the resources that are within the jail to help the people get out of this constant wheel they're on. So it's again, in my opinion, it still goes back to mental health.
So for those who we don't have the space to put them, are there other places we can send them since folks are sending them to us? Can we not send them elsewhere?
I know that I'm even aware of some residents that have made calls to local transportation companies saying that we should help them round people up and send them out to Harpersfield, which I thought was kind of comical. But no, I mean, no, there's nothing that the law allows where you just say, hey, everyone, come on the bus, we've got free candy, and then we ship them off to somewhere.
No, I mean, people that you say have been adjudicated or in the courts. And
Okay.
then if there
Yeah.
isn't placement for them, then what happens to those folks? Are they sent back to Ashtabula, or can they not be sent somewhere else in the county or even?
Yeah, I guess
farther?
that would be a question for the courts and for maybe the solicitor's office to chime in on. But that I don't know. I don't know what the outcome is after my side of the city does what it needs to do, and then, it gets into the legal system. That's a whole,
Okay,
it's a whole
Assistant
nother-
Solicitor, do you have any comments on that?
So a lot of what you're talking about is going to be very, very fact-specific. Someone who comes in who has a finding of guilt for a drug offense is going to be very different from someone who is arrested for standing in the park and screaming and tearing down the flags and vandalism. When those people get an evaluation, then that evaluation is submitted to the court, and then the court has to decide in consultation with the city solicitor, what the best plan is for that individual. But generally, if there's not a place, they're treated like any other criminal defendant. We just had one yesterday, I believe, that was found to be incompetent, unable to assist in his own defense, and unrestorable. So the case was dismissed, and essentially he goes back home.
And where would home be?
That's what I was going to ask. Is it homeless?
One thing, and Ms. Holman, I think you asked about this several meetings ago. Most of you know that there's been several opioid settlement cases with like the big farms, big pharma that did what they did back in those days. So we have been receiving funds for that. Right now it's been paying for part of one detective's salary. One of the things that we have been discussing with the solicitor's office, and I'm now going to reach out to the agencies, I think we're ready to do so, is hiring a social worker type or mental health agent to actually be with our police officers when we get calls like this. Now, it would only be on a limited basis during the week because it's limited funds coming into this account, and I want to make sure that we're able to sustain it. But that way, when we're encountering somebody that is in a mental health crisis, we actually have somebody trained to be there with them, to head down to the North Park or head down to wherever, just to talk to people but be an agent of the city. They won't have arrest powers, they won't be carrying a gun, but they would be there in situations where they would have better knowledge on how to handle an individual and to get them into the services they need. So I'm hopeful that we can do something like that. I'm sure it's going to have to be put out to bid. And so creating those documents, but what we'd like to do now is see if some of our local agencies, the Signature Healths of the world, the ARMCs of the world, the Glen Bays of the world that have mental health associated with them, if this is something they'd be interested in and willing to work with. Now being on the ARMC board, I know how difficult it is to get psychologists and psychiatrists recruited. It is extremely hard to find people like that. Do we need a doctor level to do this? I don't think so. I think we need just somebody trained in the mental health world to be able to assist us.
So I have a question. When I was researching, there's something called a house navigator. This would be somebody that would work when people are released from rehabs.
So there was a housing navigator actually assigned to Ashtabula County. Unfortunately, the funding was pulled from it, but I think we had that person for 6 or 8 months, worked through Catholic Charities with it, and it was called a housing navigator, and that person, whether it was reentry or whether it was just somebody homeless, helped to navigate the system to get them housing.
And what I was reading, because I know we have HUD here, that there is money available. They cited the opiate money, and HUD money as possible streams of income to pay for somebody like that.
I'd be willing to look at any kind of HUD funding for it, but and I think that position would be a good position to fill again. As I mentioned, it's a two-prong issue because now we have to have the housing for them to go into. So
when you have somebody, I know Lake County has dual diagnosis centers, and I know we don't. What is that? Do we refer people then to other places?
We can, and actually there was some state funding put towards a facility that I believe what the intent was to go at Route 44 and Route 90 at that interchange there. And it would have been like a mental health emergency room, I guess you'd say. So somebody that was in crisis could be brought to that facility from a tri-county area. It was Geauga, Lake, and Ashtabula. That was how that funding was applied for. I know that there was an initial round of funding towards it. It obviously wasn't enough to get it off the ground, but I know that is still being talked about and in the works. Although it would be an hour from us, I think it would still be extremely beneficial.
So I'm going to go back. There seems to be lots of ideas about things that could happen. And I don't want to talk about barriers, but being action-oriented, what concrete steps can be taken to actually move this issue forward?
So I guess which part of it?
Any of it.
Okay. Because there are already lots of interactions between our agencies on best practices to deal with those that are unhoused. There are a lot of interactions with those agencies when it comes to, hey, I have a person that has this issue compiled with that issue, which agencies and which funding source help take care of this. I mean, there's a lot of that navigation already going on. 211 is a great resource for people when it comes to needing programs of navigating that system to help people. I still, in my opinion, still think that the day center is the first step we need, and that's going to bring a lot of those agencies together. And we have had discussions with Catholic Charities, with Signature Health, with Square One, about how we can all pull resources together to get this started. And that is one of my very hopeful things to get going
So
on.
what's going to move the needle?
Money and finally getting a commitment
Now,
from those
it's my
agencies.
understanding that there's money out there. As a matter of fact, I'm hearing that this problem is going to continue because it's profitable for a lot of organizations here. And that's something we don't oftentimes talk about, but that's, that's what's said quietly, but we all, hear it quite loudly, but not in public spaces where people will own up to it or figure out how to use those monies, right, to help actually clean things up in the community.
I agree. And if I know of those funding streams, we'll go after them. But I mean, those have not come about that I'm aware of. So if you have more information than I do, please share. We will take
Can
any
I-
advice and anybody willing to help at this point.
Can I ask the assistant solicitor a question as far as if somebody's incompetent? I didn't know, I've got like 4 decades of nursing experience and case management and with dual diagnosis and with knowing you can't make somebody do something that they do not want to do. One of the issues I found when I was out working was even if you gave somebody a home and they have their check coming in every month, that money management skill and probably the need for a guardian or maybe just a rep payee of the finances, not a guardian of the person. You're still going to make your own decisions, but when that check comes in, I still need somebody to pay the rent. I know how much I need for groceries, and that's hard to do. We would always reach out to Catholic Charities, and then after, when I retired, they were like, do you want to be a volunteer guardian? And I said, well, at some point when I have some extra time. So they were like begging people, they needed, people to do certain things, and it's hard for somebody to accept, that rep payee. So now I'm thinking rent being higher now. So you have, this is what your check is, and now maybe your rent's a little more now. Eventually, the person loses their home again, because the funds. So, I mean, I know that's another aspect of, I don't know if anybody knows, or Catherine, is there still a lack of guardians, or is there a lot of guardianship going on now, or payee stuff? And
So guardianship is very different from payeeship. I worked prior to this job with the county prosecutor's office, and I represented adult protective services. There were never guardians available for elderly adults in Ashtabula County. They just don't exist. Catholic Charities does the payee-ship program, and they're very good at it. I don't know what the status is of the number of volunteers that they have, but it's an all-volunteer program.
And they do a good job, and they also have those, I'm thinking they still have them, but they have those classes. So I think when you do have the payee, then they still want you to learn, because eventually, to learn those kind of skills. But then if you've got somebody who's, I don't know, maybe they're bipolar, and, when you're having a really good day and you stop taking your medicine, then, I've got all this money or whatever. So, things can kind of spiral. Somebody did have a home and they're all situated. Next thing you know, they're homeless again. So, I know it's all individual basis, but it's not a cookie cutter, thing, because each person's situation is different. But I totally agree with the manager on the day center that if there's even a place where somebody feels at the end of the day, instead of enabling people and just giving them the food, or you want to empower people to be the best that you can be. If you're in a place and you're feeling respected, and maybe there's some things that they could do, whether it's stuff mailers for a church or do something. And eventually, the person is feeling respected, because they have to feel pretty low at that point. I'm coming here for all these things. And then maybe if those human service agencies are there after a while, because I can know everything to tell you to do to be successful, but you got to meet people where they're at. So eventually, one person at a time, if you could help, and then that would be a place for people to go during the day. Because where are you going to go? You're just wandering on the street, and then you have a group. How you have your network of friends, then everybody's got their little circle. So.
And I would also, Ms. Holman, you made a reference to those that are making money off of this. So there are certainly some agencies, some people in this community that are held maybe on social media at a very high standard, that they are doing all this great work and helping all of these people. When it turns out there are a lot of people that are keeping people homeless in this community, keeping them homeless and controlling them and profiting off of them. And, at some point, that's going to come home to roost for some individuals. We're aware of it, keenly aware. And once some of these people stop being afraid to go on paper with the stories that they tell us, it's going to be embarrassing for some people.
So,
Be careful who you donate your money to.
right. So the big thing,
Can I
Yep.
don't know where you're
Yep.
going, but there are two other things
Yep,
that I
yep,
wanted
yep,
to ask
please
about. To go back to Madam Chair's request around data, I honestly don't see what the harm is in requesting data. We should be making data-informed decisions and not just going on our opinion or hearsay. It's a small town, people do a lot of talking. And going back to the word accountability, I would also recommend that we start having some level of accountability so that we can make informed decisions by asking people to provide some data to the city.
that's what I was going to say next again.
And one more thing, and I don't want
Okay.
to lose this. Mr. Timnier, I know we're in the process of rezoning, and you mentioned that the majority of the facilities or institutions are in the city limit. It is my hope then that as we look at zoning, that we will begin to place some of these organizations outside the city so they aren't all concentrated in the same area.
And that is my hope too. Whether we can accomplish that through zoning is going to be a legal question, I hope. But as we saw with the moratorium, there wasn't all of the moratoriums that I wanted that we were able to get through. So I believe in every community you have to have a quote unquote place for certain institutions to be able to locate if they want to locate. So it's going to be, I'm excited to get to that part, to really dive into it, to see what can and can't be done. But I can tell you the people that inquire right now, it's not that we don't welcome the conversation, but we don't go out of our way to support somebody that wants to open one of those types of institutions in the city, and we will help them try to locate elsewhere.
So for action, how would do we need a motion to make an action that we would want letters sent out to our rehab centers requesting information?
I think if the committee wants to just request information, just reach out and ask them if they provide it. It's gonna be, I'm not sure with HIPAA and everything, what information they can provide to you,
Oh, no,
but I'm
they
hoping
can't
that
say
just,
Who, but
well, I'm hoping that just, area data or, different things like that, they would be able to provide. Yeah. But I think we also
Maybe-
have to talk to,
Like, what
The
data do
Catholic-
you want?
well, that's what I'm
Exactly.
saying, though. I
Yeah.
think there's other data that you need to look at, too, on top of, if you want to just look at, okay, the rehab centers here, what's your patient data like from a rehab center standpoint? But there's a whole other, that's one portion of the homeless population. The other portion is those that are losing their homes or falling on bad times, that the Catholic Charities of the world, the Salvation Armies of the world, the Dream Center, that we know of, my staff, and how we kind of can compile that data. Samaritan House is another good reference. They have to keep a lot of that data for their grants. Where are people coming from? How did they get in this situation type thing? And how many have we saved or put in a home that went through that type of system? Because I think that's another, when you look at the recidivism,
right.
you're going to find that I believe the national standard is 17% are successful in the rehab area. So it's a constant cycle there. Whereas, I can't remember which year it was, but there were 108 people that went through the Samaritan House, and only 8 of them returned to their former status in life after they left. So 100 people were helped and were bettered by going through a process. And those are the agencies that we work with and try to really help. So whether it's the rehab centers when somebody's ready to go and they do have exit strategies, whether the people follow those exit strategies or not are one thing. Maybe it's getting the rehab centers and these agencies better hooked up so that aftercare plan
30, 60, 90.
is right. But there's more of a support system on top. It's kind of like what we do with the NEO fund for business owners. When you start that business, you have to come to a monthly meeting. We're going to teach you how to do the books. But there's accountability after you leave. And I know there is a certain amount of accountability, but maybe one of these agencies are able to step in and help that accountability part.
And I guess another question I wonder, are they warm handoffs? Or is it
I
a
don't know.
paper?
Yeah.
Is that something that we can require, Catherine? As a city?
How would you require it?
That you would, if somebody's leaving your agency, that you are having a warm handoff, so you know that they're not being released to the streets, they're being released to a home, that it's set up for success.
How would you require that, I guess is what I'm asking you. So hospitals, treatment facilities, they're all regulated by the state. Their operations are regulated by the state. I have my doubts that they would allow home rule authority to extend to make
You knew
that
what I
sort
was
of a
gonna say.
requirement. I also wonder how you would enforce that.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
So I honestly believe that enforcement comes a little farther down the line. I think if there is an ask and there's an expectation that some data be provided, that rings a bell. People know that, somebody's watching, somebody's looking at the data, so that raises a level of awareness. And after looking at the data, if we are able to determine, or whoever, some patterns, it's the patterns that we address and can ask questions of. And then you get to a point where you can talk about, I don't know if you want enforcement accountability, but it starts with just the mere ask and collection of some data.
Well, I can tell you, anywhere that you're leaving, you have to have some kind of a plan. A hospital, you have a discharge plan, or you leave like, AMA. So then it's up to the person what they decide to do. Even if, you're educated and you go to the hospital, and they tell you, listen, you need to lose weight. You want to be off this medicine or whatever, this is what you need to do. Okay, great, you gave me all this great information. Thank you, and then you go eat whatever. I mean, it's like the same scenario. Everybody has choices and options. I mean, legally though, like Catherine said, they know all those things that they have to do. And been there, done that, and watched and sat there with discharge plans with people, and then when I'm case managing and going to their house and going, oh my goodness, and then they're in a crisis, and then they're just walking down the street or whatever. And so it's difficult, and it's all individualized. But these places, I truly believe, trying to do the best that they can, but it's up to each individual, each one of us. It's like the same scenario. But then they have, there's a lot of deficits with all the different diagnoses and all those things. So you're needing that nurturing, people feeling comfortable. So again, going back to, I love the day center idea.
Yeah, we've
Yeah,
talked about that.
and,
for-
And we toured a facility in Lake County that's run by the Salvation Army that extremely impressive. We went there with representatives from Catholic Charities, my staff, Samaritan House, some other local folks. That's like the dream center for us at this point. We just want to get this off the ground. But I mean, they had showers, they had lockers, they had
People are gardening, they're doing things,
Yep,
they're,
yep.
being
a lot of those programs
useful
worked out of it.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until you get that root part back for somebody to just say, I'm gonna follow these rules or whatever, you have to feel good about yourself. So,
It doesn't appear to me that Counselor DiGiacomo is trying to dictate or even make assumptions about what people do or don't do with the information after they're discharged.
No.
I think from my perspective, even as a teacher, with a classroom full of kids, I give grades, right? Principals are gonna ask for our teachers to turn in grades. It's data. So after a while, I begin to look at my grade data, and that begins to tell a story.
well, I think
And
the first
story
thing,
that's
I
being
totally
told is
agree,
to help us get
but I think
more
it's
information.
deciding what data you want to get, that's the basic. What data do you want from each different place?
I know what
Which
I
is
want.
gonna-
I want to know how many people they're treating each month, how many are from our community, how many are from outside of our community, upon discharge, how many went home, how many were released to the streets, how many left without medical against medical
And some of them may
advisements.
have some data that they already, and they may even have more things that we're even thinking of, that they're already keeping track of internally, that's how their company
So
works.
I just think
You know?
it would be great if we have that, because like I said, my phone rings off the hook with this problem, and that's why I brought it to council, because I want to represent people, and I think that we should send out a request for that. Is there anything else you think that we need to add to that list?
Well, you just said that off the cuff. I think I'd have to look at it, read it, digest it, and it would,
Madam
see.
Chair, if I could
what's
make it, not to
legal.
interrupt you, but if I can make a suggestion, why don't you ask the agencies what type of data they keep, and that they'd be willing
Mhm.
to share? There might be a whole breadth of information that we're not even thinking of that they keep record of, that
And
they
I'm
would be able
Oh,
to
I'm
share.
sure.
And am I
I'm sure.
actually thinking our health department, might there be some information they're interested in hearing about from our health department?
The next step to that, though, is what do you do with that data to affect change? And how does that data, again, the root problem is those that are on the streets that don't want the help and that are causing the issues.
I'm just looking at the spigot.
But we don't know if the people that are on the street causing the issues are coming from the spigot or not.
No, I know that.
The data will tell you that.
Well, it may or may not. I mean, it's not going to give us names. Yeah.
No, we don't need
Right.
that. That's
Mhm.
privacy anyways.
Are you guys okay if I open this up to the floor?
Absolutely.
Does anybody on the floor want to say anything?
Hey everybody, Blake Hinkle, corner of Union and 16th in the Harbor. Just wanted to speak in support of Ms. DeGiacomo's efforts. Data is like the cornerstone of any action that we would have. So I think it's really kind of a no-brainer ask. So that's my 2 cents. And I think knowledge is power and everybody knows that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Smith, Ward 5. A couple of things to add to the data, and please don't take offense to this. We have several people here that are in crisis, and I'm not talking about the people that truly want help, okay?
Could you speak up?
Yes, sorry, short. Is that better? Okay. I think we also need data on what is happening, sex offenders that are coming into the city, drug traffickers, criminal, violent crimes. Do we have data on that? Okay, that would be something to look at. When we have a police officer, thankful for, that's going through the parks and Main Avenue, is he asking people, where are you from? You know, is there any way of getting any ID out of them? Is that too personal? Where did you come from? How did you get here? What are your plans in the city? Is that something doable?
Madam Chair, Ms. Smith, yeah, that actually has happened.
Okay.
So in a lot of those times where we're having those encounters with folks and they mention where they're from and they say, I've been trying to get back there, that's when we call on different agencies or other supports that the city has to maybe even round up a bus ticket if a person. But again, they have to go on their will. We can't just say, here's a bus ticket, make sure you get on it.
Right.
But there absolutely has been situations where we've helped a person get back to Florida this summer.
Okay.
So.
Okay. The other questions I would have, do they do background checks? When you say you have a problem with someone that's in the park, by the library, all over town. Okay, this person's a problem. You know who they are. Is there a background check done on them to see if perhaps they've committed a crime in another city, state?
So if they're involved, if they're detained for further investigation, and this is a law enforcement question, so I hope I'm saying it right, so correct me if I'm wrong here. If they're detained, that's when an ID can be asked for or they can be run through our lead system, okay? To see if there's warrants, if there's anything outstanding, if they've committed crimes in other areas. Typically, we're looking for if there's warrants elsewhere. If there are warrants, and it's happened several times, we call those agencies to say, hey, we have Mr. X here. We see they got a warrant out of your department. Do you want to come get him? 9 times out of 10, or actually 9.9 times out of 10, depending on what that crime is that they committed or the situation the person's in, they will deny coming out to get that person. It all depends on the warrant.
And how can we change that?
State law,
Okay.
Build a bigger jail.
or, yeah,
Well, we're in the process of that.
we're
I
working on
believe.
that, yes. Mhm.
I'm hopeful that that is
Yeah.
going full force.
And that's, not to bring up a totally different subject, but that's another issue that we've been working on with the county. There are a lot of people that are in our jail that we're housing that are bound over to the county, but the county has not come pick up.
I'm aware of
So
that.
taking away jail space for what we need to do for
I've
our
had
operations.
questions, as you know, when
Yep.
we went to the meeting for that.
Mhm.
Okay, I think the daycare center is a wonderful idea. The only thing I will ask is what happens at nighttime?
Yep.
We're
Right.
back.
Well, and the hope is, having a day center, we gain that trust of individuals so that we have the services there to say, okay, are you ready? Let's get you into a place that's going to be the next step for housing for you. So it's not just, yeah, at 5 o'clock we shut the door. For the first
Right.
while, it's going to be at, whatever that number is or whatever that time is, yes. But the hope is, hey, these people are just not out to get me, because it takes a lot of time to gain the trust of individuals that have been fighting for their lives every day, just to survive. It's a survival tactic. And to gain that trust, to get them into the system and start working with them, takes a lot. And I think by having a day center where you get to know people, you get to know their backgrounds, you get to know their stories, they start to realize you're not out to hurt them or rob them or harm them or keep them homeless. I think that's when it starts to evolve.
Is there something we can do to get a mental health facility?
Whether one would locate in Ashtabula County, I don't know. I think it would have to be in a location where it can pull from a tri-county district like the one we've been talking about. I think the state needs to step up and bring back the state-run institutions that there used to be.
Correct.
You know,
And what can we do to do that? Write letters? Can we all as a council get together? What
maybe
can
we
we
can
do?
get one of our representatives off his property tax soapbox and actually start focusing on the problems that occur rather than taking money away from us that are trying to, we at the local level are trying to address all these problems with limited funding.
Well, I think we have done a lot of effort we've put in a lot, and please don't take offense again. We put a lot into golf carts, food trucks, a building on Bridge Street for aesthetics. I think that we should put the time into this for our city. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ryan Lensel. I live right here on Main Avenue. One of the primary questions that I have is we've talked about the fact that money is an issue, and we've talked about the fact that the services are here, so the people are coming here. We know that the services are profitable, and we want to collect this data, but we're asking how we can go about that, or if we can even get that data. My suggestion is that we provide, just like many other businesses in our community, a license to these treatment facilities, and therefore, if they do not comply with the data that we're requesting, if their AMA rates get insanely out of control, if we have any kind of suspicion that they are harboring drugs or they're not following protocol, that license can be put in jeopardy. And then that would provide us with the opportunity to have a little bit of leverage to have them come to the table and be partners instead of leeches in our community. The money is here for them, the people are here, and when they're not, they're bringing them in. But the council, the city manager, there's only so much that you can do if you don't have any kind of leverage in these situations. And licensure is designed to make sure that we're upholding a certain standard across the board. We do it with many of our businesses. This particular business is very volatile. We know that the failure rates for these treatment centers are extraordinarily high, as the city manager has said. So we know that we're bringing in a large group of people that are going to fail out and wind up on the streets. So when we have these organizations that are not meeting, say, a quarterly report on these statistics, and they're not providing a proper transportation for these folks, and they're not following responsible protocols, we have the ability to put their license in jeopardy. I think that there should also be a fee for that license based on the size of the institution. I think those fees could be put into a fund for the city to combat the homelessness. As we've talked about, there isn't a lot of money, so that's a way to raise funds. And I think that we should look into the possibility of including as a rider on that licensing, like 1.5% of their gross treatment collection, the revenue they make would be earmarked for a city-ran fund for the day center or for other things to combat homelessness. They're here, they're making a large amount of money on the people here, they're impacting the daily lives of our citizens. The least they can do is provide some of that financing back to combat the results of when their programs fail. So I think licensure is the absolute kind of key to solving many of these issues.
Can I ask the solicitor, is that legal?
I love that very general question. I've not been asked to research that particular point of law, but we have never found a law or an ordinance that the state legislature, the courts haven't said is preempted by a law of general application. All of these entities, hospitals, treatment facilities, residential care facilities, they're all governed by state statute. So I would doubt that any kind of licensing, additional licensing, would be allowed as home rule authority because it's preempted by a law of general application of the state. But again, I don't have case law to cite to you.
Okay, no, thank you.
I guess I'm going to say it just so I remember it and trigger all the rest of your minds to remember it. When we start doing the zoning, I know that I believe I've seen in other municipalities and other areas where zoning fees are based on the type of business coming in. And maybe there's a way that we can set a proportional fee for specific types of institutions rather than having a quote-unquote license. There's the fee for the business application or something like that. Just wanted to.
I was going to comment, or I was going to ask the solicitor, Ms. Colgan. Ms. Colgan, is it legal, or is there a legal mechanism for the council to compel these institutions to give this data?
Not that I'm aware of.
No. So there's really no recourse if they don't want to give it up. They really don't have any reason to outside of maybe public outrage. Yeah. Thank you.
I honestly think what we're going to find is there, again, through a lot of not only my conversations, but some of you have had conversations with the facilities. There is a willingness to help. I think drilling down into this data is a good thing. I think what we might find is the homeless problem that we have. There's certainly some aspects of it that are come through these agencies, but there's a much bigger groundswell happening that I think we need to be very, very cognizant about when it comes to affordable housing and it comes to the other services that we offer here in the city. There was just an article I read today where elderly folks are becoming homeless, just running out of money in their old age because of inflations and different things that are going on, medical costs. The amount of people right now, and again, I say this from my experience on the hospital board, the amount of people right now that are finding they're getting removed from Medicaid, the Medicaid standards that were put in place during COVID so that a lot of our population was covered, those are starting to be rolled back now. So the eligibility requirement is now unattainable for some people, and getting into the affordable care system or getting into their own insurance, who has an extra $3,000-4,000 a month laying around when you're already struggling to pay bills for now healthcare? Healthcare and the cost of those, if you have an incident, is going to start affecting home ownership. So it's not just people that are coming here for treatment. There are a lot of other things that play in the United States right now that are going to affect home ownership across the board.
And can I say, sorry, I was going to say the cost of food, so all these places that get their food from like the Cleveland Food Bank, they've had a decrease, so it kind of trickles
Yes.
down. And then I just saw something that the SNAP reimbursement, so that's been cut.
Yes.
So now you're going to see, at least, and then hopefully, the schools can still you know, be able to give the breakfast, the lunch and that, because for some folks, that's, you know, like,
All they have.
that's all that they have. So there's that trickle-down effect of that, when you think of that's just a basic need. Because for right now, the ones that are unhoused at least can go here, 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 and get a bite to eat, but we're hoping those places are able to sustain the food as well. So.
Well, one of the
you know,
conversations
there's
that I
lots
mentioned,
going on.
what I mentioned today with the volunteer, you know, he mentioned it's 60 to 80-year-olds that are doing all this volunteering because we have the time, but that, you know, at some point, age is going to be a factor with the volunteers. And the new crop of volunteers and younger people getting involved is not what it used to be.
And I would just say, it was either the spring or winter, last spring. We had the director of Square One here, and we had the head, the nurse supervisor for Square One here, and they were more than willing to. They gave us a lot of information that night. They gave us a lot of data. I remember they had many testimonial people from their organizations talk, which was nice to hear. But I think they're more than willing to. Like I said, they already gave it to us once. I'm sure they'd be happy to do that again.
Yeah, I don't think you're
I
going to get
think-
pushback
I-
for data.
I
Yeah.
think people will be willing to do that. So that's, I guess that's where we will start.
Okay.
So it's 6:36. Does anybody have anything they want to add before I adjourn?
Yeah, did I miss the unfinished business?
Go ahead.
So last time we met, we had conversations around tax abatement, and I had a couple of questions, and some questions came to me. So I would like to
Sure.
expound upon that, because I think it's a far more comprehensive issue than we are allowing for. So at the last meeting, I proposed a but-for clause.
Yes.
And that but-for clause simply is added to the application for the applicants to then say, but for this abatement, I would not be able to move forward with the project. Now, something interesting came up, and Mr. Timonero, I'll need you to help me understand this. I believe that council was under the assumption that the application came before the renovation. And people kept saying that, oh, if they're not gonna get the tax abatement, they're not gonna build the property. That's what some of the sentiment was from council. But when you mentioned last time, you said after the work is already done, then they apply for the tax abatement.
That's correct. So
Yeah.
the application on residential comes after the project is done. And I explained this, the application on commercial has to be put in prior to any construction starting, and it has to be either approved or denied by council before any tax abatement is given. That's on the commercial side. On the residential, it can be after, and when you look at the language that we have in the application, some of the things that need to be submitted are all the bills, the final cost of the project, and a occupancy permit before we then bring that application to council for
So
consideration.
that was an aha for me, because people kept saying that without the abatement, people wouldn't do the work. But you're saying people are doing the work and then they're applying for the abatement after
With the
fact.
expectation that they're going to get it based on past
Get
practice.
something.
Yes.
Something.
Mhm.
So the but-for clause, how it works is it's for the intent is for the applicant to simply share information with us so that we can make a more informed decision about receiving the break for a project. Some will build it anyway, some council is saying they may not build, but we don't know that. Those are just assumptions we're making. And while this may be true in some cases, what we haven't talked about is that oftentimes property tax abatements are given to either applicants or companies that don't really need them. They want them. We all want a break. But do they need them, and to deprive the city of income that it would have without the subsidy? Now, my proposal is that we add the clause to get more information, and I don't know if it would be before and after, so all applicants receive this statement that they have to complete. The other thing that I think is important for us to think about is we provide a range of options. Tiered flexibility means if it's residential, whether it's for-profit, or it's nonprofit, and oftentimes Mr. Timonier says that they can be in any area, but are we targeting blighted areas that we need them to do something because they're infill lots or high vacancy areas? So we can think about, these are opportunities for us to think about how we can revamp our tax abatement program. Something else that I asked was, do we ask for anything in return? And Mr. Timonier, you said, well, we don't now, but you were open to the idea. You say, well, what could we ask for? And in some of the research, and I think even before I was on council, I asked you when we were talking about the Pittman project, I was like, did we ask that they guarantee a certain percentage of jobs be given to our local residents? So for commercial, can we ask for something in return, like job creation, whether it's job quality? If it's someone building houses, affordable housing, we've been talking a lot about that. So what are we asking for in return so that it is mutually beneficial, is what I've oftentimes asked.
Madam Chair, before you move off that subject, just so you're aware, when it comes to the commercial side of that, in the application, they specify how much the investment is going to be, whether that's in building, machinery, equipment, and they also specify the number of new jobs that would be created from that. That application then, during the life of their tax abatement, is reviewed every year, and they must be meeting those standards that they put in the application, or it can be pulled.
And so the other thing that I want to propose is clawback. And a clawback, we can structure it differently. We can decide if we want to proceed in this way. If someone does not honor their commitment, I know you say our review board, has the flexibility to renew them or not, but just a couple of things. That the company has to repay the amount if they don't honor their conditions. We can prorate the amount. We can require them to accelerate their payments if they cease operations within a certain amount of time, we get a tax abatement for 7 years and they do something in 5 years. Or we can suspend or terminate if they don't pay back or if they don't provide the affordable housing or whatever the thing is. But my proposal is that we've had a simplified sort of rubber stamp approach, and I actually think that we could consider some other options that would be a mutually beneficial relationship if we were just to think more creatively about how we implement our tax abatement program.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to correct one statement, the review board is only there to make a recommendation to council, but ultimately council has the final say on whether those abatements move forward or not.
That was new to me too.
No, we've done that every year. Okay, well,
My
but
revenue.
each year we've brought that to council with, here's the review council's recommendation to council.
Yeah, and I've always heard that what I heard, I didn't say you said it, is that the committee actually reviews and decides, and we just pass.
The committee reviews and makes a recommendation to council, which is then put into ordinance form for you to ultimately uphold or deny.
And I don't think we actually explore it very much. We just approve and keep it moving. But I know you're going to say that's on us as a council. You say that's on us as a council. Yeah, so those are the things.
So can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
In what wards have we been seeing new construction? Has it been in all the wards, or there?
It's two, one, is Werner Field is just kind of on the cusp of, West 17th is 3.
Yeah.
But is that part of Ohio Avenue 3? No, I don't think so, no. Certainly on Lake Avenue, which is 3, we've seen it. 4, I don't think we've seen much at all of new construction. Maybe there's been a few renovations, I think, in Ward 4, where we've done some renovation tax abatements over the years.
Around 20, 4, 5.
I think
20 is
five
mostly
just had a
3 and
renovation.
5.
23 and 5.
Yeah.
Mhm.
5, I think we've had very, very little. But here again, especially in 3 and 5, when we do infill zoning, I think because of all the different housing that has come down in those areas where we have those lots available, and if we can structure the zoning in a way that it makes it affordable to build a house on it, I think that's especially where tax abatement is going to be important. And then, you know, we're still discussing with the land bank about, they've targeted the Station Avenue area. Within that program, they're going to need tax abatement to make those affordable. Not for the developer, not for the land bank, but for the individual, that ends up with the house. So, yeah, and I had, I believe at that same meeting, you had asked for me to start collecting data. What I'm finding is most of the area, Ashtabula County can go up to 100% and for 15 years, where we're at the 100% for 7 years. So we're missing those extra 8 years. A lot of the municipalities are at that 15-year threshold. Some that I have found, I want to say it was Warren, I emailed the director down there and received information back, has somewhat of what you're talking about, where different zones of the city have different rates. But within those different rates they had, new construction still was seeing 100%, even if it was in all these different zones. But there were different levels of construction that they had different abatements for. I'm not opposed to the but-for clause. I'm just concerned that, you know, you have people that are purchasing lots, getting into construction, doing the construction, then coming up to us and saying, hey, I'd like to apply for my tax abatement. And if they don't know on that front end that this might not happen, you know, would they purchase the lot in the first place? So how we get the message out there that we're gonna completely flip the way we have been doing things, and we can debate it all you want. I think the way we've been doing things has been pretty darn successful, considering we haven't had new construction here in so many years, and then all of a sudden we've had all this construction. We do also see that is slowing down now due to economy and things that are happening right now. But we've been on a good path, and how we get that message out to the realtors, to potential homeowners, to people looking at purchasing lots, those are things we were going to really have to explore, because I certainly don't want to be the one to say, "Ooh, you didn't, do this at the beginning. Now, we're sorry, but we can't offer you a tax abatement."
Yeah,
Much like we have with, businesses that open up and say, "Ooh, I forgot to get the zoning permit," and then we are left with dealing with things like that. So I'm just,
and
I'm not opposed to putting that clause in there. What you do with it after the fact, I think, is going to be kind of hard for a homeowner to swallow after they've built a home.
Yeah, and I think that's something that council could explore and research. But there's something that you say, and I continually push back, Mr. Timonere, because I never advocate all or nothing. I've never been an advocate of 0 plus 100%. Yeah. But I think people hear that I'm against it, and I was like, no, I just say that there are several numbers between 0 and 100.
you've
We
made
can
that very
offer
clear.
a tax abatement, but not across the board at 100% for everybody and every applicant.
I respect that opinion, and as I've tried,
Yes, you did.
when there are the resources that go into a project, I've said, okay, I'm willing to take this back, even though the applicant did apply for the full amount.
Yep.
And at this point, I very much respect and I appreciate council's desires on this, the majority of council's desires on this, to continue what we've been doing. This is the long game. This is like our investments. You have people that are building 200 and 300 and 400, and in one case, almost a $700,000 house here. And in 10 years, we're going to be recouping from that. And yes, it's for 10 years, but at the same point, the income that they're bringing in, that we're charging 1.8% on, is more than covering what we weren't getting when that house wasn't there for those 10 years.
And that's a common justification that you'll find in the research. But again, I'm not advocating against tax abatement.
Understand.
I am not.
Yeah.
I'm just
I
asking
understand.
for us
I
to
just
be
think it's a
more.
great tool that we have in our box.
And it is an instrumental tool that we could build out so it's much more beneficial and less detrimental to our public schools.
Can
and
I,
public
can I
services.
say right now, the way the cost of building is, I'd almost be going for the 15 years, 100%. If someone's going to spend $700,000 when they could go to the townships or whatever and not have that 1.8% or whatever. I mean, I just don't want to lose that momentum. Eventually, things will get saturated, and so I can see some changes, but, I mean,
I
when you're
think-
saying that the cost of everything is going up now, and
Well,
we're
and
saying, come, live here, that's a,
I think the other thing that's important, it's probably been around the 14 or so, 15 area where we started to see some of these things, especially in the harbor being developed and tax abatement going on there.
yeah.
Those are rolling off now. And
Right.
we're starting to see
We're
and so we have to
collecting.
also look at how many tax abatements are we giving and how many are rolling off? And I've provided some of that data to you to show what that is. A huge success story was Briquettes. I mean, they had a tax abatement for that beautiful building, but that's long gone. And look what we
Right.
have because of it. So, it completely understand that you're still not advocating for zero, that there's a whole bunch of numbers between there. But I also think when we're competing, it's been successful to this point. So,
And it'll continue to be successful, even if we
I've seen things that
don't allow across the board for even for-profits, at 100%. We can still have a win-win situation, win-win for the city and the residents as well.
I just don't want it to backfire at the moment, the way things
Backfire
are.
means a zero. We're not backfiring.
No, I mean that we
Well,
lose
even if you say we're only going to go
development.
to 75%, yes, it's very possible that somebody's going to say, fine, Conneaut's offering me 15 years, and I was
Right.
willing to go with 10, and I'm going to go to Conneaut. Yes, that's a lose. Even if we just offer at a different percentage, that's a lose.
Yeah, and if they are going to leave because of a but-for clause, I don't think they really intended to stay here anyways.
I don't think they would leave because of a but-for clause. I think they would leave because of the uncertainty of what council would offer them, or if the max is only X and the max elsewhere is Y.
We don't have to advocate a max. It could still be out there for 100%. We don't
I
always
guess
have to.
I'm referring
afford
to,
100%.
you've made comments about in certain areas of the city, we have different abatement programs, which would be a max.
No, I didn't bring that up. I think you said that in your study that you found that that some municipalities do offer different
Right.
percentages in different areas
You have
of town.
advocated for different parts of the city to have different rates to
No.
encourage development in places that need that development. Yes, you have.
No, I think that was Mr. Simeone. He said maybe if certain areas have had complications or struggle or challenges, then perhaps we can offer a higher amount in those blighted areas. I've never said only certain areas can get the top dollar. No, no, I've never said that. I'm for tax abatements, but I'm for it.
So if you have a but-for clause and you just stick that line in there, is that all they do is check the box? What else do they have to do? That's what I'm not understanding.
What you're asking for is like a narrative from
It's
an
just
owner
some
of,
evidence,
here's the
some
reason
area,
why
just
I'm
more
requesting
information
this.
for us.
Because it just, to me, I don't know how you would determine the need fairly, like everybody's disclosing their stocks and bonds and this and that, and so then it's,
That's not what I said, and that's not what I'm advocating either.
so that's what, you know what I mean? Because anybody, it would be ridiculous to say, no, I wasn't gonna build it. So if everybody checks that box, I'm just not sure how when you're,
Rationale you all came with and said that if people don't get the abatement, that they
no,
won't
but
build.
if you're, and then people are voting on it, so I just don't know what
Who
other,
who votes on it? I don't know, we just get the application.
No, I thought you were saying, once we get the application, then isn't it voting on?
No.
I don't
Absolutely.
understand.
No.
You
Oh,
know,
wait a minute.
we see an application and we just say yay or nay,
Yes, but that yay or nay is you voting on it.
and I oftentimes vote no,
Yes, you do,
honestly. Yeah.
but don't,
But I thought
don't
your
think that
point
it's
is-
my
Wasn't
decision.
understanding.
It's
yeah.
not my decision. I present the application to you of what we are recommending, but ultimately, it's not my decision of how that is of how that is granted. The vote of council
Right.
for tax abatement is the end all.
Sure.
As someone that has no skin in the game in tax abatement, it comes across like when I hear someone get an abatement that has a $700,000 house, like poor rich person. Point being, I feel like Ms. Holman's just advocating for more information in terms of equity and transparency in relation to people all getting an equal fair shake. That's what this is coming across to me. We get more information, then we can maybe make a more weighed judgment to make sure someone isn't getting a shake and a nod in a back alleyway. And I'm not saying those things are happening, but perception is reality a lot of the times in these situations. That to be said, for my nickel's worth of free advice, I think if a rich person's gonna come here and spend that kind of money, they've already fallen in love with the lake. I don't think Ms. Holman's off her rocker having these conversations about that. I just wanna say that.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Hinkle, and no, I wasn't meaning that at all. I just was meaning that, and it doesn't have to be a rich person that, just has all that money. Maybe they saved or this or that. I was saying, how do you fairly determine, because everything is based on data. So each person, like I'm looking at like the application or whatever it is with this but-for clause. So what would you put as the questions? What are you disclosing? All of your assets, your this, your that. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I didn't understand what goes underneath like this one line of what the ask was.
No, and I hear you. My whole point just being is that regardless of that, I think to Mr. Timonier's point, if someone's coming here and they're building a starter home and they want to have an abatement for a home that's less than $250,000, that's a reasonable conversation. Someone that's going to build a $800,000 house, I understand the argument that maybe Conneaut on Lake Road or somewhere else may be more enticing, but frankly, if they're looking in those realms anyway, why wouldn't they look in Saybrook just down the street where they'd probably get no income tax at all and have more pliability in relation to maybe getting that abatement?
So that does happen.
Yeah.
It does happen. There are people that are building in those townships now that don't build here because of the tax abatement, because their income is such that the 1.8% outweighs.
No, and I hear you, but to Ms. Holman's
we don't
point.
get that tax then when.
No, and I
after
hear
the
you,
years
and that's
are up.
fair, but to Ms. Holman's point, they weren't really devoted to Ashtabula anyway. And the whole backbone of her point too is that we're letting these people that have already made all of their wealth come here and settle and get even more wealth on the backs of our emergency services and our school children. That's what's happening.
But I think the point we're missing is if a person builds that house, it doesn't matter if that person lives there or not, or if that person takes off tomorrow after that house is built. That house is now an asset in the city that's going to be taxed until it's torn down.
No, and that
So it doesn't
point made.
matter who
Point made.
owns it, who does what with it, who does anything. Once that structure is there, it's more than as we've said, the proverbial $400 in taxes that we get with just dirt.
Yeah. No, I mean, and to your point, I'm not in any way on this body, but if I was, I probably would vote more often than not in line with doing those things. My only point being with her is just the haves and the have-nots are getting wider and wider, and the haves are getting everything they can, and they're laughing behind closed doors about it. And that was my whole point in supporting what she's saying, that maybe there's nothing wrong with taking a look at these things, if only from a place of civic equity and also just transparency. So these things there's not the perception of these being backroom deals when you get 100% tax abatement. It's
No,
because.
I understand. I just didn't understand the questions. And I was also, because the cost per square foot has increased, like a 2,500 square foot home now at like $250. It ends up being $625,000. So what it would have been years ago might have been, maybe $300,000 if it, we had that one guy, Mr. Schlossler, in like maybe 3 years ago and spoke, and I can't believe, everything is doubled, food, gasoline, buying vehicles, the whole 9 yards. So for some, that average home that would have been just an average new home, it's like doubled and tripled now. So it's not anything super extravagant, even for $600,000 now for a new build. It's nothing that's like a big deal anymore, was all my point, so.
I recognize inflation's crazy. It's crazy for all of us, but thank you, everyone.
Yes, everything, it is. Thank you.
Question. Maybe this isn't the place or time, but what's happening with the building, the old Sardi's building that burned up?
We've been having discussions with that owner. There have been several different renditions of what it could be, should be, but nothing has cemented itself as the plan yet.
Well, it's been quite a while. Is
It sure
insurance
has.
paying for that?
I don't know.
And did they receive an abatement for
No.
rehab?
No, they haven't requested anything, so.
Well, I just wondered when they were rehabbing it or rebuilding it
no.
or
No,
whatever they
there were
were
no
doing.
abatements on that property.
It is unsightly, and if
It
we're
sure
going
is.
to do Main Avenue, then
Mhm.
something needs to be done. And what
Yes.
about Carlisle's?
It was just in the paper last weekend, I think. There was an update on that where the funding, the state in infinite wisdom, who wants to create more affordable housing, took away for downtowns like ours the ability to put historic tax credits on top of LIHTC funds. So you're no longer allowed to stack the two grants together, which took away a ton of funding towards that project. So it is being reimagined at this point.
Reimagined.
Yes. It may or may not be apartments anymore.
So it may or may not be anything.
No, they're definitely going to do something. They have other obligations with other grants that they've received, so there is going to be a project there. I think it said in the paper that there was in the conversations we've had, it could extend into 26 before we.
So what you're saying is the historic and state funding, or is that how you're?
LIHTC. So LIHTC is what they were originally going to do was moderate and lower income apartments, what we call working class apartments, where it's not a low income rent rate, but it's not a high rent rate. It's kind of in the middle there. And LIHTC funding helps for that. What the state came in and said was, because it's a historic building, they had also applied for historic tax credits. The state came in and said, you can't use the two on one project.
Can't stack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? We're done. Wait, go ahead, I'm sorry, we're not
Actually,
done.
because she brought up the Sardi's building, I did have a question. As far as the house on West Avenue that caught fire, that the whole front porch is gone, I believe there's somebody living there, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I mean, what's going on with that? I mean, I can't believe that we're just going to
Where
allow
in
that to
West?
stay like that.
Where in West?
West End, across from Chick's Bar.
38th Street?
West and
38th
yes,
Street?
yeah. So the gentleman does have orders through the fire department to remediate the property. We believe, as you have mentioned, that he's living in the garage area now. So yeah, we're aware of it. And when you see these things, we're not just letting it happen. There is a legal procedure that we have to go through
Right, I'm
to
sure.
have them comply.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And then one other thing, and as far as, making Ashland beautiful, are we still handing out citations for overgrown grass, things of that nature?
Yes.
Do we hand them out to the railroad on Lake Avenue and 31st?
Actually, I have a call from one of their representatives earlier this week from Florida where we sent the citation down there to have the grass mowed on that property. Yes, we have to get on them a lot. In addition to Norfolk Southern up here along Main Avenue, the fence line you see is all grown up now. So we do send those out. We also hire somebody every year, part-time, to mow other people's grass that don't comply. And this week was the first week for our code enforcement officer. So now we have a code enforcement officer in planning and community development. So that person's being trained, getting in on the system, and we'll be out focusing on strictly those things where our housing inspector can then focus on inspections.
Okay, and then one more question. So I drove through like Spencer Avenue, Todd Avenue, 41st, in that area a couple days ago. And as soon as I turned onto, I believe it was 38th, I didn't even see it, but I hit a pothole. It felt like I hit the center of the earth. Is there a plan to repave that area?
We're actually, the council is right now supposed to send me their top lists in each area. We'll compile that. We'll have that together hopefully by the end of the year so we know what the budget is for next year.
Right.
If you do encounter those things, please let me know so that we can go out there and fill them in the meantime.
Roger
So you
that.
said that was on 38th?
Yeah, well, basically, any street back there, Spencer Avenue, I believe Hiawatha is pretty bad as well. Basically, the entire section, I would say from 30.
We were talking about those last night, and especially those brick ones that are, it's bad.
Yep.
It's really
Yeah, I would
bad.
say from 34th, 36th, all the way to maybe 41st.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, before you adjourn,
Yep, yep, yep.
I'm curious as to what next steps I need to take as far as our tax abatement applications. I heard from Councilor Mills, you're asking a question, what would this but-for clause entail?
Yeah, I didn't know if it was just a line in a box, or if there's like, everybody gets the same list of questions, or I just didn't understand.
Right, so that's not something that has to be etched in stone, that it's something that we could create ourselves to get the information we want on the application?
Well, I mean, I'm personally not for a but-for clause, but I was asking if you had a but-for clause, what goes, you know what I'm saying, what goes into it? Because I didn't know or understand.
And that's fair, that's fair.
I'm kind of like thinking the 1,500, but I know we're not doing that, but, I mean,
And as far as the proposal, that we have a range of options, perhaps difference between residential, for-profit, nonprofit, or developments in targeted zones, that we look at them differently and not all the same.
I mean, I'm always open to new ideas.
Do you have any questions that I can go back and explore and bring back to the next committee meeting?
I think,
Madam Chair, can I make a suggestion? And I know this is very elementary in saying this, but before we go down these explorations and doing the homework and doing all this stuff, I think finding out from the rest of your council people who's in favor of changing this and who's not, and if you don't have the support, I don't know what the, I mean, like I said, I came with 75% at one time and it was denied, which understand the rationale why, but if you don't have the support of it,
Yeah, so when you say.
I'm willing to help you with the work, but not if it's not going to go anywhere, is basically what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and to me, before we can even get to that point, we got to find out, well, what the options are.
Well, I think the
What
simple
I
question
struggle-
needs to be
what I
asked right
struggle
now
with
is
is,
who's willing to change it?
okay, and my guess would be what changes? My guess is they would say what changes, because my concern is oftentimes counselors will shut down an idea without even exploring options or finding out more information or details that could make something work. And I think that's dangerous on our part to be that closed-minded where we're not.
sorry, I think
Oh.
you can't speak for everybody, but I have done
No,
I
no.
personally have done a lot of research on this, but
So the point
And I
that
would like the opportunity to bring our professional guests in that talk about tax abatement, just as other people have brought guests to this meeting, because I can certainly load a room.
I
with
actually
those that
didn't
are
bring
in
any
favor.
guests, Mr. Timonier.
Oh, we had somebody show up from Cleveland at one time.
Oh,
Yes.
that was weeks ago. But this is also Ms. Mills, when Assistant Solicitor actually proposed that we take, and I don't know if you were here for that work session, I think you were, we take a different approach, whether we bring something to council first and then go to committee, or we start in committee and then go to council. And so we've been actually going back with those two approaches. We've tried both. And I'll take that into consideration, Mr. Timonier. And the third one was clawbacks and how we might structure clawbacks if people don't adhere to the conditions of the tax abatement.
I mean, I think if,
Yeah, really.
I think if people don't adhere, yeah, there should be callbacks.
And there are processes already in place for that, as we've explained.
All right, I'm sort of stuck. I will research the clawbacks and see what they are, and I will bring you some samples of a but-for clause. But it's not a cookie cutter model. It's actually a process where people can create the statement based upon the information they think would be useful to gather.
Why is everybody against her asking him for a but-for? I don't understand. She just wants more information. I don't understand. I really don't. She just wants more information. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's your opinion. I was just saying, I didn't know what all was in it and if it's the same for everybody so that it's a fair process. Everybody's answering the same questions. Nobody's questioning what it is. I just didn't know if it's just a one-liner, a checkbox, and all that. So nobody's picking on anybody. It's just this is new and we're getting the information. I personally am for the 100% for right now, saying at this moment, at this time, the way the world is and prices are, if somebody's gonna come and spend some money, goods and services, everything is up, that's a good incentive and it's been working. I would hate to stop the process. That's
Yeah.
just that's my opinion.
Yeah. And in the meantime, I still advocate for the services and the schools not getting property taxes. It's bigger than lining individual pockets.
All right,
Your
so
opinion
you,
Oh, that's actually fact. Actually fact.
doesn't
you're
change
gonna,
the
you're gonna
services.
research that more
Absolutely, sure,
and then bring it back?
absolutely.
All right,
And if there are any other questions, people can email me, feel free.
all right. Meeting adjourned.